This episode is brought to you by Generate Solutions, your go-to AI experts specializing in empowering commercial real estate companies and environmental consulting firms. As AI is quickly transforming industries and enhancing efficiency, it is important you don't let your business fall behind. At Generate Solutions, we streamline workflows and automate tasks by creating custom AI agents tailored specifically to your business needs. Interested in taking your operations to the next level with AI? Email mfiorante@generatesolutions.com or find us directly on LinkedIn by clicking the link in the bio. On to our episode.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with John Conenna. Tonight it brings me really great pleasure because it goes back to the field I graduated in, and we're going to speak to a man that's had over 20 years here in Chicago. You've heard his voice, seen his face on many stations here in Chicago. He's now part of Chicago's very own WGN, but Gabe Salgado, who is my guest tonight, has covered news, sports, traffic for many stations. We can start going back to WCPT, the WLIP, WVON, CLTV, and of course Rewind Sports. So many things that he's a part of that we're going to get into tonight. Athlon, the magazine. Gabe is, like I said, had over 20 years of experience, and it's a pleasure this evening to have you on. And Gabe, what now is going on with you, young man, since I opened it up that way?
Well, right now I am here at WGN Radio here in our one of the offices in our studios here. I've been here 5 years now. September 2020 is when I started here, and certainly has been an honor being part of Chicago's very own on the radio side. Didn't think it would ever happen, but it did, and here I am 5 years later. So, you get in this business thinking, this might be a possibility, that might be a possibility. I don't know about this, but it took 20 years, but eventually I got in the door here. So,
incredible.
Here I am 5 years later.
Listen, I'm sure your family and your family's got to be really proud, and you should be proud of yourself because it's that dream come true when you, like you said, will this ever happen? So I'm going to kind of go back with you. How does it get started for a Gabe Salgado to get into this situation, meaning the passion? Did you always want to be an interviewer? Did you always want to be around sports? What was it? Was it grammar school? Was it high school? Do you remember the first thing that says, I want to take a little crack at this, see what's going on?
So like most children at a young age, I was fascinated with the fact that this box at home and this panel in mom's car, you press a button, you could see everything, you could hear everything. And I was always fascinated with, the technology that makes it all work. And it started from there. Once I got to be probably around 6th or 7th grade, however, I decided I wanted to be a pro athlete. And because once I realized, how much money athletes were making, and I played, football, basketball, and baseball growing up, whether it was for my school team, youth league team, park district team, I was always active in sports. And
Sure.
my plan from there was, playing, in school, high school, obviously, hopefully get a college scholarship, play one of the 3 sports, maybe 2 like Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson, maybe all 3 and make history in that way.
Yeah, right.
And then play professionally and then go into the broadcast booth after retirement, as many players do. Didn't quite work out that way, so I had to go to the first plan, which was getting in media in the first place. And after high school, I ended up going to Illinois Media School, which back then was called Illinois Center for Broadcasting. I graduated from there in 2001, and there's been some tough roads along the way, but here I am. It'll be January will be 25 years that I've been in this business.
Mm-hmm.
I've done, like I said, I've done radio, I've done TV, I've done writing, and I have worked, other jobs in between to kind of, pass the time when
Sure.
I would go through, these gaps of unemployment, which, as we both know, tends to happen in this business. So, everybody at some point, but altogether, I've been in working in media in January. It'll be 25 years now.
Sure, Gabe, this 25 years flew by. I mean, even
Yeah,
like with these bumps in the roads, you're like, holy cow. Like even the way you said it, 25 years, is something. Um,
yeah,
I
you're
got to
telling
ask,
me I was 18 when I started.
wow. Wow. Yeah. So you start, like you said, from the bottom up and start looking around. Um, I mean, to be on WGN, which we'll get to now, I mean, you're basically, I mean, from what I've seen and what I read, and of course, hearing you over the years, you're basically this freelancer that can be, you're the pinch hitter. You're the pinch hitter, that can come up in the bottom of the ninth and really help everybody out here. Would you say that I was wrong in saying it that way?
I've always looked at myself as a Swiss Army knife in this business. I've, learned a little bit of everything. I've done news, I've done sports, I've done traffic, I've done writing, I've produced talk shows, I've produced other radio programming. I've never been a DJ, but I've been a board op for music stations, playing the music and everything else. And I've done promotions. I even had a sales job in this business at one point. So I just took it upon myself to learn a little bit of everything because as we know that your dream job doesn't come right off the bat. You got to work for it. You got to put in the time for it. And there's also going to be a time where you may not be able to do what you want in that moment. So you got to find other ways to kind of, build up your resume and keep yourself going in the business. And for a long time, that's what I did because ultimately, ultimately, my goal was to work in sports media, and I still kind of have that, and then on the back burner of sorts because I'm so focused with what I'm doing now at WGN. But I did, do other jobs in this business along the way just to kind of keep myself busy because someone once said to me, "Don't rest or else you'll rust," and I truly believe that because in my first few years in the business jobs were few and far between. I'd have a job, and then I would, then when I would lose that job, I'd have to go get a job outside of the business, and there were times where I'd be stuck with it for a long time, and trying to get back into the business is a lot harder than people who don't work in the business don't
Yeah,
realize. And
right.
right, so I mean, I'll put it to you this way: there was a stretch in 2007 where I was unemployed for almost 6 months. And in order to pass the time away until I got back in the industry, I worked at Party City. So all you youngsters out there who want to break in the business, there's going to be moments where
Sure.
that may happen to you. You're not going to get your dream job off the bat. There was also times where I worked two, three, right before the pandemic hit. I was working 5 jobs at one point. For 13 years, I worked for a tech company full time because everything I was doing in media was all part time and freelance. So, the tech company was how I, paid my bills, and everything else was, just part time and freelance as a way to just keep busy and build up my resume, so to speak. So, um, I've always looked at it as I've, developed this ability to adapt and to learn how to do different things as a way to kind of just because in this business you got to be able to adapt, and the ability to do that will help you survive along the way because as we all know, there are people in this business who, are very good at, one, maybe two things, and it may get them by, but there also may come a time where that one or two things may not be there anymore. And then they kind of have to figure out something else, and they may not be able to figure that out right away. Whereas for me, I always took it upon myself to learn different aspects of the business and different responsibilities and different roles. So that way there was always, somewhere for me to land
Sure.
in an effort to keep going. And I think that's how I've lasted for 25 years.
You know what, Gabe? Thank you for bringing it up that way because I got to be honest with you. I'm just listening to this now and I'm saying, okay, so this versatility and this Gabe is not afraid to try it. I interviewed a lady that you might know who's on NBC, Casey Stendhal. And Casey said the same thing. She does these sports at night with Blanzy. They switch off, I guess. And she says, John, I had to do whatever I have to do, kind of like Gabe Salgado just told us that whatever it's got to take, you have to do. Your versatility has been really shown. You were also writing for, correct me on the pronunciation, Athlon magazine.
Yes, I did. I wrote for them from 2018 till about 2023, if I remember correctly,
Right.
covering NFL, college football, basically just all football for them. And
Sure.
that
And
certainly,
and gave the sporting news also.
yeah, I did that. I did that in the fall of 2017 for a few
Yes.
weeks. So there was that. I wrote for NBC for a time. I wrote for Fox. I penned a couple of stories for ESPN. I've kind of been all over the place in terms of writing freelance, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, I've covered games, I've done feature stories, I've done interviews, and that's another thing too. Especially when it comes to writing, you learn how to do different types of stories, but feature stories I've learned is where, other than obviously current events, feature stories is kind of where I found my specialty in terms of sports writing. That's kind of where I, developed my following in a sense.
Sure.
That's kind of how that's how I push myself along. And holy, I apologize. The light turned off in here.
The lights went off.
There we
Okay.
go. There we go. And
I don't think
back
WGN
on.
pay. I'm sure WGN pays the bills.
I think it set a timer in here, so I
Yeah.
apologize for that.
No, no, no.
But
We're good. We're good.
feature stories is kind of where I, really established myself as a sports writer, in
Yeah.
addition to covering games and things of that nature. But with Athlon specifically, I did a lot of game previews, and
Wow.
I will say probably the most popular story that I did was when back in 2018. Northern Illinois was playing Utah. Utah was coming to DeKalb to play the Huskies, and I picked Northern Illinois to win. And let's just say I had Salt Lake City upset with me for a few days, but in the end, even though Northern Illinois did lose that game, it still kind of worked out in my favor because I ended up getting on the ESPN radio affiliate out there as a guest, and I kind of outlined why I thought Northern Illinois was going to win that game because I come to realize that um, out there the Utah fans were a good portion of the Utah fan base was more used to the Northern Illinois team of the '90s that couldn't, buy a win, as opposed to the,
Right.
more recent Northern Illinois teams that found success,
Sure. Sure.
against the bigger schools and things of that nature. So kind of like bringing everyone up to speed on that. But ultimately it was kind of fun to see how, obviously, a lot of people think Salt Lake City, they think the Utah Jazz, and they think now the new hockey team, the Mammoth, out there. But
Yeah.
college sports is just as big out there, and I really, I mean, I kind of knew that to be the case, but I really got to see just how dedicated their fan base was when I wrote that story. So, but
Okay.
ultimately, it ended up being fun and engaging with a lot of the Utah fans. Then when the game day came, I get to Husky Stadium, and all the Utah reporters already know who I was. So that was that yeah, that's never happened before. Like I've covered games here, and I would have to introduce myself to the local reporters here, but all the Utah reporters who came from Salt Lake City already knew who I was. So that
Okay.
was certainly an interesting experience. But
Yeah. I mean, did you
but
park your car in the parking lot where I don't know if you remember the movie Happy Gilmore when the guy goes, "I'll see you in the parking." You know.
none of that. But like I said, I've covered all the local and
Sure.
pro and college teams here. I've done some national stuff. So, um,
Incredible.
I just take pride in the fact that I've had opportunities, and I've done a lot of things that there people in this business who want to do them but haven't had the chance. And
Sure.
So, you really, even though I may not necessarily have gotten where I wanted to go with some of those opportunities, at the same time, I also realized that, there's a lot of people that, wish they would have had those same opportunities. And, you just kind of, take those as understanding that, some of those things turn out to be blessings in disguise. And that's kind of a lot of what it is for me, is that a
One
lot of,
door opens, that one door closes. Right.
right, exactly.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. You know.
for example, when I got hired here at WGN, it happened, during the early months of the pandemic, where, you know, really nobody locally was hiring. There wasn't a lot going on, and they just happened to have a job open. I applied for it. I got hired and just kind of ran with it. And here I am 5 years later. I found a way to stick around. So
Wow.
thankful to
Incredible.
thankful to everyone in charge here that's believed in me and
Sure.
gave me the opportunity, and that's why I'm still here. So I you know as crazy as this world can be sometimes, at the same time, I do enjoy coming to work every day. And, I take pride in the fact in knowing that, we're making sure that, the people have the information that they need,
Sure.
because,
Sure.
ultimately that's what we do in this business, is we give information and we give out, details, and, we tell the public what we need to know, or what they need to know. And that ultimately is, the key to this
The
business.
key to bit.
And,
You know,
that's another thing too, that also, even though I never really thought, I never really saw myself being a news anchor. But I do remember watching newscasts growing up, and I just remember, seeing, how dedicated, all the anchors that I grew up watching, the Bill Curtises, the Walter Jacobsons, and so on and so forth. And
fantastic
I
people.
actually, and actually, being here, I got to meet Walter on several occasions before
Oh,
he
wow.
retired earlier this year. So
Legendary. Legendary.
yeah, yeah, I know. I never thought that would ever happen, but
No
it
way.
ended up happening. And it's like I grew up watching him, and to meet him and have conversations with him, like I had like that's almost I was almost like an out of body experience, like
Can
that
imagine.
moment. But just seeing, like, how dedicated that they were, to their jobs. It just kind of, it's kind of, it just really kind of inspired me to, like, whatever I do in this business, to apply that same level of
So,
dedication.
I got to ask you, because of your versatility. I mean, Channel 9, WGN, of course, now I'm saying Channel 9, WGN radio does not make a mistake, because I'm sure they saw this. I mean, when I go back, how I opened this up, I mean, the experiences you had with all these stations that I rattled off: BON, CLTV, WJOB, WLIP, WCPT. I got to ask you, so it could be the night before. And all of a sudden, are you getting the call, or are you getting the thing, or the day before, hey, you got to go cover that game downstate, or hey, Salgado, you got to go over here to the United Center to do this game with the Bulls, or you got to go out to Soldier Field to cover the Bears. There is this last minute aspect to your
Oh yeah.
job, correct? Yeah. And
Oh,
how
oh
do you,
yeah.
and that's a pressure in itself, right, Gabe?
I mean, there's been times, here where, I'll get a phone call or a text message saying, hey, so and so called in sick. Can you be here to anchor in 2 hours? I've had to do that. And that's another thing about, this industry too, is, dependability. And, sometimes you may need to drop what you're doing, and, you may need to cover for somebody, because, again, the show's got to go on regardless of who's there. So, that's another thing too. It happens, not just in radio and TV as well. Even with the local newspapers, there may be a time where, the beat writer, may call in sick, and they may have to, find a writer. Maybe the sports editor themselves has to go out there and cover the game. So, that's also an important aspect of the business too, is just, being prepared for anything, and understanding that even if you may have, a set schedule, okay, I'm going to work these days at these times, there may be a day where, they may call you last minute, say, hey, so and so can't come in. We need somebody to anchor this newscast, or we need somebody to put this together. Can you do it? And I always try to my best to make myself available in those moments.
I got to ask you, when it comes to the sports, and I want to go back to what you were doing though, but when it comes to the sports, what do you think the sport for you is the biggest forte for Gabe Salgado?
Um, hey, what do you mean? Like, what was my favorite sport to cover? You mean?
Yeah, if you had to pick one.
Without a doubt, football, and that was simply
Okay.
because I played it for so long. I played it, as a kid. I played it for 2 years in high school,
Yeah.
and I played semi-pro football in my 20s. And which was so I can't believe it was so long ago already because I'm in my
Yeah. Right.
40s now. But
Wow.
I played semi-pro football from 2003 to 2006. I had a couple of tryouts with the Arena Football League when that was still around, and
Sure.
so I pursued even though I didn't play college football, and even though that career path didn't work out the way I wanted to, I still pursued a career in pro football, and that's the sport that I can know that's the sport that I know off the
Yeah.
back of my head. Like I'll watch a Bears game, and I can.
Yeah.
Uh, it's amazing how I can just look and say, okay, here's the coverage that this team's
Okay.
in, and I think that this team's going to run this play based on what they're doing here, and
Yeah, because of your
um,
experience in the game. Right.
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even though I never played anywhere near the level of the NFL, at the end of the day, it's still football, and so that's the game that I've always felt the closest to. So it's easier for me to dissect football. Although I do pretty much take a deep dive into almost every sport. Although I will say, even though I covered hockey, I did cover the Blackhawks
Okay.
right before the pandemic hit, but still not the greatest hockey mind. But
Well,
definitely.
I think maybe if you looked up on me, I'm the hockey guy. You're the football guy here in town. Okay. I'm the hockey
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I definitely, when it comes to the hockey, I leave that to, I leave that to people with more expertise than myself. But come to me for football anytime.
I'm going to pose at the end, the very end. I'm going to pose something to you about football, and it's going to be fan now versus the experienced Gabe Salgado. But this will be at the end, and I hope you don't come through that camera what I have to say, and then I'll want to hear your reasoning behind it. But that'll be at the end. I got to tell you, no, it's just doing an interview. I'm always looking for something. I had questions lined up, but the way you've steered this about the experience, about how you do things. Because again, for years, and I have a degree in journalism myself, but never practiced it just to do this podcast. I thought you just walked into the studio. All right, here's the paper. Yeah, Gabe, go ahead. It's not like that, correct? You got to be on your tiptoes all the time.
Yeah, and the other thing too about it is like growing up, I thought that's how it was too. That the news anchors, they come in, they sit down in front of the camera, they
Just
read,
so
they
on,
go
yeah.
home, and then when you get in the business and you learn about editorial meetings, production meetings, and you see all the work that goes into it. Like for example, when I'm anchoring here at WGN, a lot of the time I'm the one that's putting together all my scripts and all my own audio. So and so in radio news, you're kind of doing a lot of that yourself. Especially when I'm anchoring overnights, half the time I'm the only one in the newsroom. So when there's breaking news, I got to grab that plus write my
Oh,
newscast plus do the newscast. But during the week when we have when we have a fully staffed newsroom, it makes that easier. So again, that ability to do multitask and do different things at once certainly comes in handy. Whereas maybe TV, they'll have more people to work with there. But on the radio side, we the thing I will say about um, you know at least from the newsroom here at WGN, because I've also worked at WBBM. It's a little bit different over there, whereas different people are assigned very specific responsibilities. But the newsroom here at WGN Radio, that we all know how to do a little bit of everything, which makes it a lot easier to get the information faster, get the content together faster, and get everything out there as fast as we needed to. So it certainly is a big help. So we all work collectively, as opposed to just having one person does this, one person does that, and another person takes care of that. So, having, the collective approach, I think is probably, I think more places should adopt that model.
Sure.
Because it certainly, helps us become more efficient in what we do. So, and then the fact that I can write, I can edit audio, I can, use my voice on top of that as well. So it certainly, comes in handy when we need to get information out there in a hurry.
What's a normal day for you and say start time to finish? What's a normal?
So today, for example, I was on the afternoon shift and I wasn't anchoring, but I was producing more local stuff today. So I pre-recorded a couple of stories that were used by our afternoon anchors, and I also, gathered a lot of audio from other stories and wrote scripts around it, and so I kind of did that. I got here about 12:45. I started at 1. I finished right before I came on with you, in fact. So I
Wow.
just just finished my
That's a
shift.
hard
And
7 hours. That's a hard 7 hours.
but you know what though? I love every minute of it. So
For
I'll take
sure.
it any day.
Yeah.
Um, but when I'm anchoring, because I anchor weekend overnight, it's a little bit different. I'll get here probably late afternoon, early evening, because I'm catching up on everything that happened during the day, and I'm gathering sound. I'm, writing everything out, and then I got to plan, 5 hours worth of newscast, um, and then of course, obviously, I'm keeping my eyes and ears open for any breaking news that may happen during the middle of the night as well. So each day it's a little bit different, and you just got to be prepared for whatever
Sure.
comes along the way.
Are you doing anything, because I follow GN exclusively. I really do. I'm not saying this because you're on my show tonight. I'll watch Peyton. The other gentleman there that was on there, I forget his name. I interviewed him too. He used to cover the Chicago Blackhawks for years. But are you guys in cohesiveness with the radio and the TV is what I'm trying to say?
So the good thing about that is we do share content with one another, and sometimes on our talk shows we will bring some of the reporters on, depending on what they're covering. So there definitely is a relationship there. There definitely is a lot of networking there, and like I said, the big thing is sharing content, which is a big thing because if you listen to our newscast, we basically have the TV people or our reporters out there, which is a big help to
Sure.
us as well, because it allows us to still have a presence, where a lot of these stories are happening, and then we get the sound, and then we put it out for the radio audience, because let's face it, a lot of our audience, they're not watching TV, they're listening in their cars, they're listening on their phones, or they're listening at work. They might have a
They're
little
streaming
radio
it.
at
They're
work,
streaming. Yeah, yeah,
or they're
exactly.
stream they're streaming it on
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
laptops at work. So they
Sure.
may, they're maybe in a position where they can't watch TV, but they want to know what's happening throughout the course of the day. So definitely, the TV people at Channel 9, they're definitely an important partner to us, and they've definitely helped us out, especially me on the weekends when it's just me, and especially at night, and I got a newscast to fill, and so it's definitely there's definitely communication,
Yeah.
so that our TV partners are definitely important, not just Channel 9 but also News Nation, our national network
News
as well.
Nation. Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely plenty of communication, and it's definitely big network networking that we have all working together collectively, and certainly definitely helps us out on the radio side for sure. We definitely benefit from all that.
Because I see it at 10:30 every night. They have the Sports Extra all the time. They're doing it after
Right.
10:30, right after the news. So, and I've seen you in interviews with Peyton and everything else too, with Jared.
Yeah, that was back during the sports feed days on the old CLTV, which
Yeah, I
for
saw
all
that.
you
Yeah.
for all you youngsters out there, the channel doesn't exist anymore. But yeah,
Yeah.
those were fun times. The thing that I appreciated about that show is Larry Hawley was the producer of that show, and he did not care if you wrote for a local blog or if you were, a national personality. If you had
Sure.
something to say, he was going to bring you on the show. And
Wow.
so I have, even though he's not there anymore, I'll always hold him in very high regard and have a lot of respect for him because of the fact that, he was willing to give me a chance to, to put me on camera and have me, give my thoughts and my analysis and, to be able to, be on there with Jared and Josh Friedman. I
Right,
did
right,
that.
right, right.
I appeared on that show between 2015 and 2019. I appeared on that show. I think it was like 15 or 16 times. I think I still have the videos from that. So,
I'm gonna tell
um,
you, he puts you right in the fire.
yeah,
I mean, which is fantastic.
yeah. So yeah, those were definitely some fun times. But also too, before that, I actually did when CLTV used to do traffic reports. I was there. I did their Saturday afternoon traffic reports from 2008 to 2010.
Saw that.
So, so that was also pretty cool in itself. Like I actually wasn't on camera. I just had to walk into a booth and talk, and I had the information right there in front of me. So that was actually pretty nice. That was actually pretty nice. So,
Yeah.
um, but but yeah. So our TV partners are definitely a big help to us on the radio side because they're our eyes and ears
Yes, sir.
where we can't be and also like I said, a lot of the reporters and hosts, come on our shows with our talk show hosts, and to kind of give us even more insight and into
Sure.
whatever the subject may be. So, our TV people are definitely, we thank them for all they do
Sure.
for us, and I hope that we're also helping them as well.
Well, I'm sure you are. I want to kind of switch gears here a little bit, but I got to tell you, before we switch the gears, I want to ask you the question: is the TV in the future out of the realm for Gabe Salgado?
You know, I'm always open to doing that. Whether or not that'll happen, that's not
Yeah.
for me to say. But I'm always open to it. I like TV. It's always fun to do. It's a different audience, and especially now because you have streaming and all these other ways
All
to
these, yeah,
view
ways.
TV.
Sure.
It's a larger audience now. So, like I said, I'm always open to that. Like I said, but again, that's not my call. But if it happens, great. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
I'm still happy with what I'm doing. And again, like I said, that's above my pay grade on that one.
Well, listen, if it ever goes to that side, just please remember the little podcaster, John Conenna, that
Oh, of course.
we said it, John. Listen, we're going to switch gears. I want to bring up something, and I know you want to speak to our audience about. Um, uh, you had a issue with the weight gain. We were talking off camera before we did this interview, and we had put on a lot of weight. And I don't know if it was during you said before COVID or during the COVID years. And of course, then you went on this, well, I'll use the word binge to lose this weight and everything else. But at that time, do you remember the period of when you did put on, and you being an ex-athlete and everything else, when was that period when you did put on this weight? And may I ask you and the audience, where did at what point did you get up to in the weight?
So I've actually had this battle since high school. So long story short, I got diagnosed with scoliosis as a freshman in high school, and I had spinal fusion to correct it. And from there, I was basically on the shelf for almost a year. Couldn't, run, couldn't play sports, couldn't exercise, couldn't do anything. And, pretty much all through high school, and not being knowledgeable about, nutrition and, just, like normal teenagers do, you're putting a lot of junk food and fast food and, a lot of just, things we really shouldn't be eating, but
Right.
yet they still taste really good in our body. And, um, but so I gained a lot of weight then. And then as I got older and into my adult years, into my 20s, I kind of got that under control. And especially, once I played football, during my semi-pro football days, that was probably when I was in the best shape of my life, even though I was, in the 300-pound range then, but, playing, sports actively and, working out. And having somewhat of a, diet back then, really kind of helped me. But then, once I stopped playing ball in 2006, I kind of let myself go a little bit like, oh, I don't have to try as much. I don't have to work as hard. And I developed, I fell back into some old habits. Gained weight then, but then I eventually lost the weight, kind of got back on track
Sure.
and really worked hard to keep it off. Then before the pandemic hit, I I was maintaining, 310 pounds, which, to me wasn't that bad considering that I had been, a lot heavier previously. So,
Gabe, how tall?
you
Hey,
know,
Gabe, how tall are you?
I'm about 6'2",
Six
roughly.
two. Yeah. Okay.
So, consistently working out and so then what happened was right before COVID hit, I found out I had a torn meniscus in my left knee. During COVID in June of 2020, I had surgery to fix that. While I was recovering from the surgery is when I got COVID the first time. And from there, it just kind of led to a different spiral of, ailments. I got COVID a second time. I eventually tore the second meniscus,
Oh
and there
boy.
was just a lot of things that just, didn't go my way physically.
Sure.
Um, and again, I fell back into, bad habits again. And between 2021 and 2022 or 2023, I gained 140 pounds. I wound up being 450 pounds.
Top.
And as I was approaching my 40th birthday, not, wasn't a good sign. And I was in pretty bad shape. Stairs were my worst enemy. I would just be sitting on the couch watching TV and I would, start breathing heavily for no reason. Wasn't exerting myself. Just, wasn't in good shape. And um, I almost resounded myself, to the fact that, hey, this is probably where I start declining, and ultimately, I'll probably wind up dead. And what really got me to change that, for starters, was my wife and my mother, seeing them and how it was affecting them, seeing me that way.
Sure.
Not really an emotional guy, but seeing how my condition was hurting them kind of really got to me a little
Sure.
bit. Then when my 40th birthday came in 2022, the fact that I woke up that day and was still breathing, I'm like, okay, I'm still here for a reason, so let's try and do something about it. So this time, because when I had lost weight before, I had tried other medications in the past and they had worked to some degree, but still didn't quite have the nutrition down,
Right.
and still kind of had some, bad habits. But this time, I worked with a doctor, I worked with a dietitian. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I got to do this the right way because I'm getting too old to keep being this heavy.
Sure. Sure.
And so I wound up, I do take Zepbound, and I do that, and then I just really changed my diet. I eliminated a lot of things. I eliminated, and as much as I love soda, and as much as we all love soda, and as much as we can use the
Oh,
caffeine, unfortunately, it is very bad for you. And I was drinking. I didn't realize how much I was drinking it until I stopped. And I have it every now and then, but I really try not to drink it as much. I drink a
you've
lot.
curtailed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I drink a minimum of 10 cups of water per day. Sometimes I do more. And just really like just changing my diet. I've cut out a lot of fast food. Um, I cut down, a lot of things. I love pizza. Like to this day, I mean, you could blame Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the reason why I love pizza so much. They ate pizza every day and saved the world while doing it. I figured, hey, I could do the same thing. Well, no,
This is
you
a good
can't do that
thing.
in
This is
real
a good.
life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so just really just being serious about changing my diet, and like I said, taking the medication, and if you are able to do that, I say go for it, because it certainly has helped me. Because the other thing too is that I've also long before I had this problem, I had asthma and sleep apnea. So imagine having that and also being that heavy and it
And
just get,
that
yeah.
the 450
So,
pounds. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So it certainly has helped that. And the other thing I did too is, I had a gym membership for years, but this time I built myself a home gym. Because this time I have no excuses. I can't be like, oh, well, the weather's too bad, so I'm not gonna, make the drive to the gym, or, oh, well, it's after 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whenever the gym's closed. I could just go down into my basement, anytime I please,
Sure.
and everything I need is down there. And so pretty much all just about every day I'm down there, whether it's either, in the morning before I go to work, or, sometimes when I come home from work. And it's just been, the dedication to that, and the dieting and everything. And I've also had to learn, how to train my body in other ways, because unlike my 20s and 30s, can't do heavy weights anymore. My body cannot handle that.
Yeah, right.
Also had to be smart about the cardio I was doing, because, hard cardio can only work for you for so long. And especially since I got two bad knees now. So it's just a matter of, like, learning how to train smarter and not harder as you get older, and
And
just
adapt. Yeah.
right. And then just putting all that together. And I honestly didn't think it was possible. I mean, to me, it was, for the longest time, because I was a football player. All I knew was, go hard or go home, and I've learned that there's actually ways where you can still, get a good workout and still,
Sure.
maximize what you're doing without having to sacrifice, your body and your joints, and risking, injury and things of that nature. So, um, within the last, since February of 2023, when I started the Zep Bound, I've gone from 450. Last time I got weighed, I was 385 pounds.
Well,
But the crazy thing about it is I don't feel that I weigh that much, which is the important thing, because I've weighed that much before and I felt miserable. This time I don't. Not where I want to be. Obviously, I'm still working to get down even less.
are you looking
But
to get down to 310?
I mean, honestly, ultimately, I'd love to be, 240, 250 again. I don't know if
Well,
I'll get that low, but certainly 310 would definitely be a lot nicer than being.
that was your playing weight.
Yeah, yeah, probably, yeah, 310, 320 was about my playing weight.
Right.
And yeah, so but I will say this, my message for those who may be going through the same thing.
Please.
I thought, because I was going through this as I was approaching 40, and I'll be 43 on Sunday. And I feel like I got a new lease on life somehow. I don't, even though, yes, I still, like I said, my knees will bother me from time to time from, the injuries that I've had.
Sure.
And, and I do, get arthritis here and there. I've battled plantar fasciitis. But the thing is, like, beyond, though, beyond those, I don't feel like I'm in my 40s. I feel like I have this newfound sense of energy that I haven't had since my football playing days. I wouldn't say I found a fountain of youth, but I would say that um, I feel like I have this, newfound sense of purpose, and this like willingness to just, push myself again. And, it is possible if you do every, first, do what I did first, foremost, seek professional
Sure.
help, dedicate yourself, make the right choices. And, like I said, it is possible. Because, like I said, I didn't think that, unfortunately, I know people who died at my age, and for similar reasons. They weren't taking
Sure.
care of themselves, and I thought I was destined for that. And I was able to, snap out of it, and, uh get myself in a much better position than I was previously. So,
Sure.
like I said, I feel like I got a second win in my 40s. you know Growing up, I was always told, oh, well, enjoy your 20s and 30s, because once you hit 40, that's it. And I can honestly say, for me, that's not true, and I don't plan on letting that be true. And, if I can, keep this up, into my 50s, God willing, then, I'm gonna do my
Yep.
best to make that happen. So my message to everyone out there, especially those, my age or around my age, who are struggling with the same thing, that it's never too late. It really is. And for all you music fans out there, I don't really listen to too much of his music. I'm not too familiar with him. Jelly Roll, the singer, he was worse shape than I was. He was almost 600 pounds, and
Wow.
within the last year, he's lost like 300 of that almost.
Jeez,
I
jeez, jeez.
Yeah, I actually just saw an interview with him last week because he was talking about it, and I was curious because I was like, okay, because I'm kind of doing the same thing. So, and although he's much younger than I am, but
Sure.
at the same time, he was, well over 500 pounds. So if he can do it, and I can do it, and I was a lot smaller than he was, then, so I definitely, so can you. Like I said, it just, you gotta first and foremost, you gotta be willing to seek the professional help. Like I said, I did it on my own for a long time, and I always wound up back at square one. But now that I have guidance and advice when I need it, certainly helps.
Sure.
And like I said, if you are somehow able, to get whether it's Zepbound or Wegovy or one of the other shots, I
Sure.
know that obviously it's pricey, and of course insurance can be a pain, but if you are able to get it, I highly recommend that you do because it certainly changed my life. And again, the other thing also too, just eating right, drinking more water. And like I
It's
said, I
huge.
also
It's huge. It's
there's
huge.
yeah, and also too there's vitamins and supplements that I take every day. I've also learned about proper muscle recovery as when I finish my workouts and stuff, because when I was younger, to me muscle recovery, especially after I played football in my 20s, so I can get away with it back then, was just slap ice on whatever body parts hurt the most and just take Tylenol and call it a day. Yeah, you can't do that when you get older. So
Not when we get older. No way, no way.
yeah, no.
Listen, I really appreciate you wanting to tell our audience this. I know we had talked off camera, so thank you very much for saying this tonight. This meant a lot, and when people watch this, I really want them to zero in on what Gabe said. I got 5 questions for you, and then I'm going to say something about you. But I got 5 questions, and there's a part B. It's going to be that bear question, so you better be ready for me.
Okay.
All right. Uh, Short answers, one sentence. Who's that early mentor you still think about, or a couple early mentors? Could be your parents, could be anybody that you still think about when you're going to WGN in that car and you're thinking about, wow, I'm here today after 20 years because of these people.
I think it's a collection of a little bit of everybody. Some teachers that I had when I was a kid who kind of really, leveled into me, hard work pays off.
Sure.
Obviously, family who inspired me because, I came from a family where I was one of the first to actually not only go to college, but finish. I had there's a lot of high school dropouts in my family. So
Sure.
just knowing that I had the chance to kind of like change the course of,
Yeah.
what my family achieved in life also was something that motivated me as well. And also,
Huge.
to set an example for, my friends too, because, out of all my group of close friends, I'm the only one. I take it back. Only one of my other friends went to college. The rest of them didn't. So to kind of be able to set an example for them also was important. Um, and then there were also some people in this business that taught me different things, different aspects that kind of like, stuck with me today. So it was, there are too many to name. Let's just put it that way. But there was
Yeah.
definitely
But
multiple people that helped me out along the way for sure.
very well put, Gabe. Very well put. All right. We want to get to know you a little bit better. What's a movie you can watch 200 times and not get bored?
Wow, let's see.
Give me two of them.
Two of them. Wow, because that's actually quite a long list. But if I had to pick two,
Two.
it would definitely be Any Given Sunday.
All right.
I
With Pacino.
Yeah, that movie came out when I was in high school. Fell in love with it, and every time I get to watch it, I'm glued to it. Um, and the other one I would have to say would be, and again, like I said, a lot of the youngsters may not know this one, but from the original Transformers cartoon from the '80s, they put out a movie back in 1985 or '86, I believe, that bridged the gap between seasons 2 and 3 of the original cartoon. That I
Okay.
can watch. I mean, my
All
brother,
right.
my every time I hang out with my brother, we watch that movie all the time. So, and yes, I'm a 40-year-old man who still watches kids' cartoons at his age. So, yeah. So some of these movies I can even remember all the lines from. There's more movies on that list, but like those are like the two that I can think of off the top of my head.
Fantastic. Okay. That was like when you said that. Okay. Um, I can only give you one of each. Um, we're going to talk about you got only one moment of all these teams: Cubs, Sox, Bulls, Bears, Hawks. I don't know if you want to put the sky in there, but what's your favorite moment? We'll start with the Chicago Cubs. Growing up, now, what is that one moment that sticks out in Gabe Salgado's mind?
It's definitely going to have to be that 2016 World Series because
Okay.
I wasn't around in 1908. And but I was around obviously,
Yeah.
for the disappointments that we had in 89, 98,
Okay. Okay.
2003, so on and so
Yeah.
forth. So yeah, definitely
Are you?
2016.
Let me ask you this: Are you Cubs or Sox?
So I'm probably going to upset a lot of people with this answer. I like to go against the grain, and I cheer for both teams. I've covered both teams as a writer, and I have both Cubs and White Sox gear. One day I'll wear my Cubs shirt, the next day I'll wear my White Sox shirt. I drive my coworkers here crazy because baseball divides the radio station here
Can
so
imagine.
significantly. But like because my mother raised me to be a Cubs fan. But when I discovered as a 5-year-old that we had two teams here, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and I've always embraced both teams.
Very
And
nice.
on that, my obviously the coolest moment for the White Sox, of course,
Yep.
2005 World Series.
Yep.
Um, it wasn't the only bad thing about it. Frank Thomas was injured that year. I would have loved to see him hit some home runs that
Yeah.
year. Frank
Yeah.
Thomas was the reason why I played first base when I played baseball as a kid.
What a ball
Like,
player. Yeah, too bad because I think they had to get that one DH. He was a lefty when he broke his ankle. Forget
yeah,
his name. I forget his name. He was left-handed. I think they got him from Boston. I couldn't remember his name now, but he was a left-handed hitter.
yeah.
Favorite bull moment? I know we got a lot of them there. There's 6 championships, but is there a favorite bull moment that stands out?
I'm gonna have to go and say that last championship in '98 simply because Michael
Utah.
had the game-winning shot.
Yeah, that was something. That was something. Ice water in his veins, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah,
I really liked these segments he's been doing on NBC this season because, in all honesty, if he were to play again, he would show these guys how it's done.
oh, without a doubt. Oh my God.
Yeah.
He could play in this era. Okay. Were you around for the Chicago Bears Super Bowl? But what is your favorite Bear moment up to this day?
Yeah, I was about 3 years old when they won that
Okay.
'85 Super Bowl. I did watch that game. Funny thing was, during COVID when there was no sports, that game actually NBC replayed that game because there was no sports going on, and I watched it. And of course, obviously, you remember, the defense, destroying New England. But
The
what
46. Yeah.
right? But one thing that I had completely forgotten about is the Bears actually played pretty good offensively in that game. Never mind that Walter Payton didn't score a touchdown, but the rest of the offense, like they were moving the ball, they were
Dominating.
converting,
Dominating. Yeah.
on third downs, they were gaining chunks of yards. So I forgot that the offense was really good that
Yeah.
day as
They
well.
they
So
they dominated that day
it
without a
was
doubt. Yeah. Good
so it
good
was fun. It was
analogy
fun to watch
in
that.
the
Yeah.
46-10 win. Okay. I interviewed you today. If you had to interview somebody, I kind of know the answer already, but you're going to have to change it. If you had to interview somebody, either one or two, I know you want to interview me, but you can't. Okay. Uh, who would you interview? Who would you interview? Who would you like to interview? Man, woman, who would you like to interview?
No question, I would want to interview Michael Jordan.
All right. Gabe,
Uh,
you never know. That may not be too far off your list.
here's the thing. Michael Jordan's actually my inspiration for being bald. I've actually, for the better part of my life, I first started shaving my head bald in high school,
Yeah.
and Michael Jordan was actually my inspiration for wanting to do that because it's like, hey, he's bald, but he's best basketball player in the world, one of the best
Sure.
athletes in the world, and I just thought to myself, well, hey, maybe if I shave my head, I'd be just as great. I mean, obviously, that turned out not to be the case, but he was still an inspiration nonetheless.
But the look, that look you got, it's intimidating and it looks good on you, so keep it that way. All right.
I plan on doing that.
Question, then I'm going to go to this past Sunday with the Bears. But the question is this: you've done so much here; it's incredible. If Gabe Salgado had to do it all over again, is he doing it the same way?
If I were to do it all over again, I would hope
how you've come up this ladder and become this media person, unbelievable.
I would hope that I would hope that I could do it in the sense where I could probably just stay with one or two places for a long time instead of all the jumping around. But I'll still like I said, I'm still grateful for everything I've done.
Yeah, fantastic work. Fantastic. All right. We're going to talk football for just a second here. On November 2nd, 2025, 2 minutes and 47 seconds left. A 41-27 lead and a 39-year-old Italian quarterback named Joe Flacco decides he's going to play possum on who he knew was a weak Bear defense. He played possum, if you go back and look at the video, because he showed that he was hurt, but he wasn't hurt. He came into the game with a sore shoulder, made the score 42-41. Is this a turning point that now everybody in the league knows that Bear defense is weak when they played a weak Cincinnati team? Your thoughts, Mr. Salgado?
Throughout this entire year, they're definitely not. It's not as bad as last year's defense for sure.
Right.
But there's definitely some things that need to be cleaned up. The pass rush needs to get better for sure. And obviously there tends to be some lapse in pass coverage downfield. So there's certainly some things that need to be cleaned up. But again, not as bad as last year's defense. I will say that. But I will also say that here's the thing. Joe Flacco may be 40 years old, but he still got it to some degree. I don't care what anybody says. He still has that quick release. He still has that accurate arm. He still knows how to read a defense. So, regardless of what the situation is, whatever team he's playing for, sure, there's a reason why Cincinnati felt enough to trade for him to fill in for Joe Burrow until he comes back from his injury. They obviously felt that Flacco could still give it a go, and obviously he proved that on Sunday. So I mean, here's the thing: the fact that Cleveland brought him back twice in the first place kind of shows you, that there's still something left in his tank.
In his tank.
So I definitely think, like I said, I know some people thought it was a joke when Cleveland brought him back a second time, and then of course they traded him to Cincinnati. I did not think that way at all. I mean, I thought if anything, he was probably going into a slightly better situation in Cincinnati than he was in Cleveland.
Sure.
Certainly still has some, like I said, he still has something left in the tank. He still has some skills to work with. And again, you're never too old, right? Exactly. So, but as far as the Bears defense goes, again, they have made improvements from last year. Obviously, they generate turnovers, which is a good thing. But the first thing they need to do is they need to improve that pass rush. Obviously, they made a trade today to try to help that out.
Saw that.
They probably could have made a better deal to get a better defensive lineman, but that's why I'm not in the front office. But certainly, injuries on the defensive line doesn't help. But yeah, they definitely got to kind of get that situated, if they're going to try to make this push to into the playoffs. I don't know if they will, but hey, they're 5-3 right now. A winning record, certainly better than last year when they started 4-2.
They should win this Sunday when we talk about.
Certainly beats that 10-game losing streak we had after the 4-2 start last year.
Because we only won 5 games last year, right? Exactly.
Right. So. So they're certainly headed in the right direction, but yeah, there's definitely some things that need to be cleaned up.
Again, Gabe, thanks for the perspective on that. Like I says, it was the first time that I jumped off the couch. I thought Tom Brady was in the game and not Joe Flacco. But anyway, I want to leave you with something that I always try to find something before I let you go. I always try to find something about the person I'm interviewing. And yeah, I really couldn't find nothing on you. And then, of course, I'm kind of looking at pictures of you. I'm searching. All of a sudden, it's right there. It's right in front of me. And you write on your Facebook wall, I'm trying to succeed in the world of journalism. And I say to myself, he's trying to succeed in the world of journalism? Young man, you've exceeded every expectation. You have done a fantastic job. Gabe,
Well, thank you.
You keep doing what you're doing because this was fantastic. I don't know how to thank you for coming on a conversation with John Conenna, but very proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing. I hope we can do a part 2 and see you down the road here again.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and thank you again for giving me the opportunity to come on and share my message with those who could probably use it. And again, yeah, like I said, I definitely appreciate it. So, and I would definitely like to come back on again for sure.
For sure. This will go out on YouTube and Spotify in the probably in about 2 days or so. And you can see the interview with WGN on the radio. Gabe Salgado, you'll love the history and the experience of this young man. Just fantastic work. Everybody, good night. And Gabe, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.